I'd like to talk about a basic sense of reality. So I consider reality to be everything you can know. That means everything you experience, literally, in yourself and outside in the world. Whether it's nature, culture, the universe, dreams, visions, the psyche, reading books, listening to music, your thoughts, your feelings. So literally everything in totality that you can experience is what I call reality. And if you want to bring in the word illusion in a kind of contrast, then I think that the thoughts that we have about things, you could say that those thoughts about things are illusory. In other words, they're not the real thing. Thought itself is real, but as a kind of mirror effect upon reality, then I would say that is the illusion. And I believe in Tibetan Buddhist terminology, that's meant to be Maya, the veil of illusion. So when Buddha was liberated from illusion, from Maya, he was really liberated from the illusory nature of consciousness or thought. So for me, I have a very common sense view of reality. You might say a kind of black and white view of reality. So all of my life, I think that the world I see around me through my eyes is actually real. So when I look at the castle here, I look at the birch tree, I look at the birds flying by, I look at the flag blowing on the castle. To me, I'm seeing a real world. It's not an image in my brain. It's not what they call sense data. But I believe that I'm actually looking at the actual world out in the objective sense of reality. So just as my thoughts are real to me, my feelings are real to me, my body's real to me, then what I hear, if I hear music, that's objectively real. I'm listening to the radio, I'm listening to a concert, and everything I experience is real to me. So it's not an image in my head. Yes, thought is an image in my head, but I don't think sensory reality is simply an image in my head. Yes, you get sensory data from what you're looking at, and that becomes, you might say, the illusion of thought. That becomes stored in the memory. So you read a book and you remember it, and therefore you could say the memory of the book is the illusion of the book. And if I see you and meet you and experience you, the memory of you is an illusion of you. So that's the only case for for what I would call illusion. So when the scientists say the self is an illusion, consciousness is an illusion, then what they're saying is our sense of ourself and our sense of consciousness is simply a material process in the brain. So they're saying exactly the opposite to what I've just said, that I think everything is real in itself. When I see the castle, I'm seeing a real castle that's outside, and I'm seeing it with my eyes. I'm having direct perception of that castle. And as I'm talking now, I know myself to be a real person, a real self. Now to some scientists, there is no real self, and there is no, you might say, real consciousness other than biochemical transmitters in the brain. And of course, I would say that the brain is involved in some way in mediating consciousness, just like the eye is mediating the castle. So the castle's a real thing, consciousness is a real thing, and obviously the brain is mediating what I see and what I experience as consciousness. So the castle, the brain, and consciousness are objectively real. And you might say the most substantial fact of all reality to the human being is a sense of self. So I'd say self is the primary fact of our reality, of our existence and our being in the world. I mean, if you take animals, on my daily walk, I experience lots of birds and different animals. And they come up very close to you and I can see them, they're all in a wild state. And I have close observation every day. I give a lot of thought over the years to the behaviour of animals. And if you were to ask me what goes on inside an animal, like a bird, I would say I have no idea what goes on inside an animal or a bird. I don't think it's like us, I don't think it has a consciousness, I don't think it thinks, I don't think it dreams, I don't think it remembers itself. So what goes on inside that bird from moment to moment is obviously living its life, but I would not want to say at all what that particular bird is experiencing. I mean, one idea I have is that the bird lives in the moment. So if you think of its memory as habitual, so every day for the last millions of years, say, a particular bird, a particular species, has more or less habitually been doing the same thing every single day. Just like if you go to work and you do something repetitive, you do it every single day. So you go in there and your memory functions and you go automatic and you just do it. That's habitual behavior. So really you could say the animal perceives its reality as a process of recognition and lives out its reality according to that habitual behavior. Now, the animal basically, you might say, in nature, is in perpetual danger from other species or from other birds. So there's a kind of alertness, there's a kind of momentary, moment-to-moment alertness to the full potential of danger. And I think that explains to me why the animal lives in the moment and doesn't live in time. It's not living in the sense of past, present and future. Yes, the past, the habit, is informing the present, but they live in the moment in a kind of crisis that's inbuilt into nature. They're alert to the danger and they're not projecting into the future, which is what we do. Now they can anticipate things that are signalled in the present, so they might anticipate some kind of danger, so they're anticipating the future, but they're not actually thinking into the future because they're not actually thinking. So in their memory they're recognizing some signal of danger and they're assessing what to do based on that signal. I mean, I saw a film of this person that only lived in the present, only lived in the moment. So if you came into the room and you were talking to this person and you went out of the room and came in again, that person wouldn't remember that you had just been in the room. So all that person is seeing, experiencing, is the moment in which that person's living. And I think that's what animals do. I don't think animals have consciousness. I don't think animals are processing personality. I don't think animals are processing thought or feeling. But I can't say what they are actually processing. It's said that animals do experience a range of emotions and stuff like that, but I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure that animals experience emotions. And because I don't think they have a consciousness or thinking, therefore I'm not sure that they actually dream in terms of images. I mean, you know, when the dog is asleep, for example, it may move its body as if it's chasing something, but I think that's simply their memory working in some way. And maybe people call that a dream, but I don't think they actually dream in images. I don't think they have images in their brain or in whatever. So if you think of what's called a biocomputer, a biological computer, well, if you think of the animal as a biological computer, obviously quite sophisticated, and that the animal lives in a kind of habitual way, a programmed way, and it lives and it dies. Now, if human beings with their consciousness or soul or personality, if they survive death, then I don't think there's anything in the animal that could survive death. I don't think there's no identity within that animal, like a soul or a self or something like that. Yes, it has the identity of a dog or a bird, but I don't think it has any internal image of itself or identity or anything like that. So I can't see how any animal would actually survive death. If we look at children, and I haven't really studied children, and I haven't read anything about children psychologically, but my sense of children is that their consciousness is basically in a state of openness and innocence. I think their sense of self is present, but I don't think they have self-consciousness in that sense, that they're conscious of their self. And before they develop language and they get a name and an identity, and they fit into the family, and they have a consciousness with an ego, etc., I think that the child, in comparison to the animal has no consciousness. The child has a consciousness. And the child's sensitivity is based on the personality. So they inherit a psychic quality, and the psyche or the psychic dimension produces thought, and thought is the basis of consciousness. So consciousness, thought and psyche are in their own dimension, and so is the brain and the body and the physical universe in its own dimension, and the self, the spirit, is in its own dimension. So I can remember all through my life being in a real world with real people, a real environment, society, and I've never ever doubted the objective fact of that reality. And there's no doubt in my mind that everybody I grew up with had a real sense of self, had a real sense of seeing the reality around them, and there was absolutely no confusion about that. No matter what the scientists say, or even what the religious people say, or some of the Buddhists and people like that, thinking that the physical universe is an illusion. I don't think the physical universe is an illusion. I think it's objectively real. And if we take the psyche, the dreams are mostly an extension of everyday life. So in a dream, we experience ourselves as if in everyday life with the same kind of problems and personality, and the environment's relatively the same. And yet people like Carl Jung say they've been into their psyche in a lucid state or out of the body state, and they've met entities, he's met entities that he thought actually were real and actually lived in the psyche. So you've got the idea of real entities in the psyche, and yet you have the sense of a dream being quite fictitious, just simply like a film. But it may not be just like a film, it may be actually real in some way. And then you have the idea of the psyche being the land of the dead. So when people die, they go into the psychic dimension. So it's quite simple for me. I don't get caught up in, I think, which is confused thinking when you start to intellectualize reality in a basic sense. And what philosophy and science and religion and psychology think about, as it were, in their different contexts, I think if they stuck to their own categories, like there's a physical universe, we're in the physical universe, we experience that physical universe as a direct perception, and from that observation, then science can do whatever it wants to do. Use microscopes, telescopes, and do whatever it wants to do. But why it brings in, why it questions oneself, the nature of oneself, or questions the nature of consciousness, and so forth, seems to me a waste of time. It seems to me that there probably is some psychological discrepancy or psychological disorder, and people doing it simply for the argument, just to contrast themselves with other people, and to maybe break a taboo, like science will question religion and try and break a taboo. Just as you might say a lot of religion and mysticism and dogma, they also break the taboo of rational thought and scientific thought. So you could say it's a kind of game, it's an intellectual game. I mean, I've spent my adult life studying my experience. That's all I've ever done. Is that at the age of 23 I had certain experiences that I found out that was spiritual, and from that time on, that's the interest I've had. So I read books, and the language and the context and categories are what they call psycho-spiritual, I accept those categories, but whatever the books say doesn't change the fact of my experience. First of all, there's the authenticity of my experience. Just like my sense of self is real, my sense of consciousness as being quite different from the brain body is real, the sensory world, the physical world is real. I think the psychic dimension and the spiritual dimension are real. So I have a real experience, what they might call an anomaly, a revelation, a synchronicity, a dream, and that kind of experience interests me. I'm fascinated by it. There's a wealth of information over thousands of years about those kind of experiences, and that's what I've documented. And you might say, in reality, that's my emphasis. But it is simply what I'm interested in within my consciousness, whereas myself, in a spiritual sense, is simply myself. And in my consciousness, my particular identity, you might say, as a spiritual person, has been studying spiritual experience. That's all I've done. And I haven't come to a conclusion in my consciousness. And most questions are still questions. And in terms of living my life, if what I think is true within my consciousness and my thought and knowledge and experience, if any of that came out to be false, that there is no spiritual dimension, there is no psychic dimension, there's no life after death, and the physical universe is an illusion, is simply images in my brain, so be it. It wouldn't bother me in the least. So my sense of self in the world isn't dependent on my thought within my consciousness. It's not dependent on my conclusion within my body of knowledge. It's simply an interest in being in the world. It's a cultural interest. I'm interested in nature, etc. And it really doesn't matter what actually any particular theory, any particular book says about consciousness, body, brain, psyche, dream, physical universe, spiritual dimension. I mean, that's not the basis of my meaning in life. The meaning in life is simply to be alive as a self and to be interested in life. So I've been interested in poetry, I've been interested in art, but I no longer do art, I no longer do poetry, that's the past. And at the moment I'm very interested in listening to certain kinds of music, but I can see a time where that will become irrelevant. So what I'm saying is, throughout my life, I've left a lot behind me in the past, and when you die, you leave everything behind you. And that makes sense to me, because Why be attached to anything? Why make anything more important than something else? You enjoy that at the moment. The next year you might not enjoy it. You're in a relationship and that may come to an end, or you live in a particular country, you may have to move to another country. You've got money in the bank and then you don't have money in the bank. That's not because I'm a Buddhist or I believe in anything. In fact, I don't believe in anything. I mean, literally I don't. So I can listen to any theory, I can read any book, I can watch any film, I can listen to any piece of music, and I like it or I don't like it. Or I'm interested or I'm not interested. But I wouldn't question the reality of people thinking what they think. They can think whatever they think. I mean, the people in my family when I grew up, as a child and as an adult, I have absolutely no idea what any of my family think about the meaning of life or the philosophy of life or what they got out of life or anything like that. I don't know anything about them. All I know is what they shared, and they didn't share that kind of thing, but it doesn't make any difference to me. See, people that believe in something, they think it should matter to everybody else. But because I don't believe in anything, what I write in my books, it doesn't really matter who reads my books, whether they read them or not. It's simply that I like to think about things, I like to keep a record of those things, and then I made them into books. They're really basically journals, they're notebooks on my experience as a human being. But people that believe in atheism and believe in religion and believe in politics, believe in ideology, you see, I don't wish to live like that. In fact, in my everyday life, I never read anything about technology or science. I've never been interested in science or technology. And over the years, you pick up a few things. And at the moment, yes, I'm watching some videos of neurophysiologists and people in meditation and their views on consciousness, views on self, etc. Of course, I'm interested in what they're saying, but it doesn't make any difference to me whether I watch the videos or not. It doesn't change my reality at all. But when you hear people, they think it's so important and they're completely at odds with other people and they argue and they seem to play the game and be amused at their differences, or very serious and reductionist and probably quite a lot of antagonism, maybe even hatred, maybe even violence could come into the separation and conflict between these different groups. Just as you get, really violent reactions between religion and evolutionism. Or, people in meditation believe in consciousness and materialism and such they may think consciousness is simply a material process. And you can see that those people living side by side, if they lived in the same house, or they were in the same institution, or even the same country, or even the same world, you know, that psychologically, instinctively, what do they really think about each other? What do they really feel about each other? And I'm absolutely sure that as the world changes, it going on into the future, there could be a head-on collision. I mean, the way certain people like Richard Dawkins talks about evolutionism and how all of psycho-spiritual reality is an illusion, is superstition. So he's writing off millions and millions of people's sense of reality and devaluing those people, depersonalizing those people as if they're not intelligent. So for me, I just live my life as an individual person, have experiences, and in the past I've kept a record of them. That's all. There's no dogma, no belief, I don't belong to anything, I've never practiced anything. I was brought up as a very ordinary person, and I'm just doing what I enjoy doing. So if you play a musical instrument, and then you get the idea that you want to be a professional musician or be successful in the world and in society, then you've got a massive problem. So something you love to do turns into this massive problem. Well, I've never got into that, what they call the rat race. So I enjoy keeping a journal, and from, well, more or less from my early 20s right through my 50s, I didn't show anybody my writing, only a couple of people. And about 4 years ago, I had all these manuscripts, I mean a real pile of manuscripts, and I didn't know anything about the internet. I was never into the internet and anything like that. That wasn't part of my lifestyle. I was not interested. It never occurred to me. But my nephew, who got a degree in artificial intelligence, you know, he encouraged me to get a PC and that I could get a Word program and do my own books and publish them on Amazon. Well, I didn't know anything about that. I didn't even know what a personal computer was. I knew absolutely nothing about it. I've never read anything. So until 2014, I knew absolutely nothing about the internet, computers, or anything. And now, today, I've published 14 books, and I typed them all up. I did the layout for all the books. I did the design for all the covers. So really, I've done everything in publishing those books on Amazon. And I don't think I'll be writing any more books or keeping any more records or journals. So that part of my life, which is 50 years, is more or less come to an end. So I don't even think of myself now even as a spiritual person. That was my interest. Now it's not my interest, so I literally don't know what my future will be. So these videos, you might say, are the last record of my thoughts on the meaning of my life as a spiritual person. But as I said, because I don't believe in anything, therefore I don't believe in spirituality at all. It's just something I did. If I do something, I usually do it because I enjoy it, and that's the basic reason why I do things. I enjoy walking down the river, I enjoy a bit of music, enjoy a conversation, and I enjoy most of all having very unusual, extraordinary experiences. And I think I partly inherited my psychic ability and sense of spirituality from my maternal grandmother, and it's probably something that comes natural to me. I know that my participation in the world with other people in society generates a lot of magical effects, synchronistic effects, revelations, etc. And that's been part of my social world. But only the people involved personally in my life actually know about the kind of world I live in until I published the books and made these videos. But I don't feel any identification with what you call the hierarchy in society, status and success. And I've never thought about that. I mean, I dropped out of college, I didn't get my degree, and I just naturally went my own way and lived on the fringes of society. And I never gave a single thought to success, or even the idea that other people should know what I'm doing. So I walk along the river on my own, and that's just a very private world. And of course, when I see other people, they're living in their private world as well. And when you're in a room reading a book, that's your private world, and you have your private dreams, and even in an intimate family, you have your private thoughts, your private feelings, things you never reveal to the rest of the family, etc., etc. And ultimately, and most essentially, each person has the sense of their self. And that is the most private thing of all, because you're in solitude with your sense of self. You're alone with your sense of self. And at the moment of death, you die alone. So nobody can help you. No identification, no memory, no projection is going to help you. And with a sense of self, I've always had a sense of freedom, even as a child. And thankfully, nobody in my family intruded into my private space. Nobody told me what to do. I mean, literally. I mean, not only in my behaviour, but in the way I saw the world, what I thought, the feeling. There was no ideology, no belief, no politics, no religion, nothing. So I always grew up with a tremendous sense of independence. Had nothing to do with religion. And my behaviour, my morality, my sense of the world was simply, well, I mean, I wouldn't even say humanism or secularism or anything like that. No, we're just, people as individual persons and selves living together and not needing the rest of the world to tell you what to do and tell you how to live. People will say we're all socially conditioned, we're all historically conditioned, we're all culturally conditioned. That's true, but I also think day by day we're independent, free individuals that make up their own mind in real time. So it's got nothing to do with the media and newspapers and the internet and politicians and religious people, institutions. No, day by day people live and they make their decisions out of themselves, existentially. So I think that freedom that each self has is not the same as free will, in the sense of it. I mean, you could call it free will. All I'm saying is that self is free. And in consciousness and in your body and conscious, you act things out in the world. You think things, feel things, know things, and you live them out in the real world. You do things in the real world. And I'm saying from moment to moment, that action out of freedom is a living fact for each individual. And that's what I was saying earlier. No other person's opinion impinges upon my sense of freedom. It doesn't really matter what's in a book, what the scientists are doing. I mean, they can put a man on the moon, they can make super intelligent computers, and religion can do this and that, but it makes absolutely no difference to me. And if they created a society and evolutionists and atheists took over and they made spiritual people, religious people, that kind of person, if they made them into a problem and even put them in concentration camps and even killed them, so be it. So at the moment in England I feel, well, I mean, I've always felt free. I don't feel there's any outside authority kind of looming over me or anything like that. And I feel I've just lived my life day by day. And if the society changed, and as I said, became more fascist or became more totalitarian, so be it. Just live your life. I don't engage in religion, politics, I don't engage in taking sides or anything like that. So when the Nazis came into France and settled in Paris, Pablo Picasso just carried on painting his pictures. That's how I feel. And if they shot you, they shot you. If they don't shoot you, you just live your life. And if they say don't paint pictures, then you don't paint pictures. Just take a walk along the canals. People will be people. And within consciousness and with all the different ideologies and opinions and theories and the instinctive behaviour of aggression and violence, then people have their way. I mean, even in the family, people have their way, or your friends and where you live and where you work and everything. People are always pushing against each other. That's inevitable within consciousness, as long as we have an animal body, and that translates into violent ideas and violent feelings and violent behaviour. So self in freedom, living my life, doesn't depend on my identity within my consciousness. My identity is a spiritual person, and now I'm not a spiritual person. It doesn't depend on that. So the world we live in society is the world we live in our consciousness. And if part of the world doesn't like the other part of the world within society and consciousness, then that conflict, that division will take place and is inevitable. And I see consciousness anyway as transformative, and what the global situation will be like in 50 years, 100 years, 500 years. I mean, it could radically change for the better or radically change for the worse, but it doesn't really matter to me personally, because I don't take sides. I don't believe in anything. Don't believe in good and evil. Good and evil are, you might say, definitions of certain things, like being violent or non-violent. But as I say, that's the human condition, that's human nature, that's consciousness, that's society, that's the physical world of nature, etc. And why take sides? Why think that you should be privileged, or you should be safe, or you should be protected? I don't want... No, I mean, in England, yes, we do have a military, and we have police, and etc., and you accept those conditions. But I wouldn't be a person that actually supported any social structure. But I'm not against any social structure, but I'm simply not for any social structure either. As I say, if during my life I was living in a society and they say you can no longer study spiritual experiences, you can't write them down, etc., so I wouldn't write them down. I'm not a martyr, I wouldn't be sacrificial for anything, so I would think my thoughts. And if the regime put fear into you, so you got paranoid as if they could read your mind or they're going to find out what you're thinking, of course they won't find out what you're thinking, but people can be so frightened, say in a more tribal society, where the witch doctor or the shaman, they can read your mind, they can get into your mind, which I think is nonsense. I'm not saying there isn't telepathy to some degree, but this whole thing of internalizing fear and terror based on some authority in society, something I've never done. And I'm not a psychological type person. And if I go through a crisis in my body or in my emotions, in my psychology, in my consciousness, I live through it. I don't cover it up. I don't hide from it. I accept the reality of it. And as I say, if I live, I'm living here in England, I accept the reality of it. When I lived in India, I accepted the reality over there. And if, as I say, a more fascist system took over, then I would have to adapt to that. I see human nature, the human condition, the drama of consciousness and society and culture and history as a dynamic drama. I see it as a drama. I see it as a theatre. I don't expect it to be any other way. I think human psychology, human behaviour, human feelings, human thoughts in relationship are very fickle, very insubstantial. And anything can go wrong at any time in any relationship. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I wouldn't carry on a relationship or carry on in society based on some ideal, some ethical ideal of religion or some personal ideal of relationship. You know, I want my child to be this way, or I want my child to do this or do that, and cultivate this ideal type of person. I don't believe in anything like that. A much more basic, no, I've lived my life without any guidance from anybody in my family, in society, in university, friends. Nobody's ever guided me, no one's ever helped me, no one's ever protected me, and no one's basically ever really cared about what I'm doing. I'm saying that within reason. I'm saying a few friends have been interested in what I'm doing, but essentially I haven't required from the world around me any real support or any real dependence. I leave people alone, they do what they do. I mean, if people within your family are dysfunctional in the way they look at life, then they are. And if the family breaks up, so it breaks up. And if democracy is challenged, or religion is challenged, or atheism is challenged, or that's the way it works. So I don't have an ideal outcome for the future. I don't wish for, genetic engineering to solve the problems. I don't wish for, Christ or Buddha to save the world. I don't wish for everyone to have an ideal state of happiness or anything like that. Because I don't know what that would mean anyway. What on earth would that mean? I'm sure people have radically different views on what happiness is. Or even what God is, or what Buddha is, or what Christ is. So basically, the thing that's most clearest to me is the fact that I'm a self and I'm free. But I can't qualify that freedom. I can't put it in a context of consciousness. I can't put it in a philosophy. It's simply I myself feel free. I mean, basically that's all I really have as a person. And when I die, I'll die in freedom. I may suffer in my body, I may suffer in my consciousness, but I'm still going to die in freedom. And even looking back at life, I don't think of life being ideal, or did I live the life I wanted to live, or did my dream come true, or so forth and so on. No, I've always lived day by day, week by week, year by year, the rough and the smooth, and sometimes I've written things, sometimes I've done paintings, I've lived in different countries, different cities, in the countryside, and I take what comes. So now it's almost like a blank sheet of paper right now. I've absolutely no idea what 2019 will bring within a few days. I have absolutely no idea. I have no idea if anyone will be interested in what I've written. But that has absolutely no bearing on the fundamental fact of myself being in freedom. And that's all that really matters. And what I do in my consciousness, what I do in the world, in society, in history, in this lifetime, is neither here nor there. It is what it is. If I do a little bit or I do a great bit, it doesn't really matter. No effect or some effect or a great effect doesn't really matter. So if consciousness is a game of dice, you throw the dice, well, I don't play that game. I don't play any game like that. I mean, in all my life, basically, I can honestly say that I basically live in the present of day by day, and I've hardly ever projected into the future. I've hardly ever thought of the future. And I mean that literally, psychologically. And I give very little thought to my past. Yes, I have a memory, very good memory, but I don't dwell on the past or consider the past or anything like that unless I'm thinking of my life within a meaningful context and I'm keeping a diary. But so, you know, as I say, when I say I live in the present, all I mean is I don't live basically in the past, I don't live basically in the future. I just live day by day. I'm not going to say I live in the now or I live, you know, in some timeless state. All I'm saying is I live day by day. When you're in the spiritual dimension, as it were, and your self is free, then all of the mystifications of religion, all the mystifications of states of mind and altered states of mind, states of meditation, have absolutely no meaning. Because it really doesn't matter what I'm experiencing, what I know within my consciousness. Because the self is one, and it's not based on experience, it's not based on context, it's not based on conditions. So it really is irrelevant what other people think spiritual life is. Because spiritual life is very simple, very innocent. And if people are interested in degrees of meditation or degrees of awareness, all of that kind of thing, none of that interests me. So people have an experience and they say, or they felt like they knew everything and everything's interconnected and everything's timeless and all that kind of talk. Yeah, I mean, you can poetically think that, but I don't take a lot of that very seriously, like living in the now. I mean, it's quite amusing to me when people say that, when they interpret spiritual awareness as being in the now. It's rather comical. Because if you're free in the one, you wouldn't make statements like that. Those who know do not tell. Those who tell do not know. And when the Buddha was asked about being in the spiritual dimension, he says he doesn't indulge in metaphysics. There's nothing to say. It's shunyata, emptiness. Void of knowledge, void of consciousness, void of experience, void of memory.